Many coaches and consultants started their careers in the corporate world. They built successful careers, but at some point, they responded to a bigger calling to start their own firms. Whether for the sake of freedom or simply to pursue their passions, they took the leap. Rosemary Ravinal is one of those people. In 2019, after 3 decades in public relations and broadcast media, Rosemary decided to leave her role as VP of Public Relations for the entertainment division at Televisa Univision, the world's largest Spanish-speaking media company, and she started her own consulting practice. Rosemary is a Cuban immigrant. She came to the US when she was a very young child, and they put her in a classroom packed with people who only spoke English. As a result, Rosemary developed a severe stutter that she carried for many years. But when she was young, Rosemary dreamed of becoming a newscaster. That meant she had to overcome her speech impediment. And with some help and a lot of practice, not only she became a news analyst for MSNBC Media, but also she became a polished bilingual communicator. With over 3 decades of experience under her belt, Rosemary has a lot, and I mean a lot, to offer. No wonder her client roster includes impressive names like the Latin Grammys, Norwegian Cruise Lines, HBO, Liberty Mutual, just to name a few. So how does one leave a high-level corporate career and build a successful consulting practice? Let's find out how Rosemary did it in this interview. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Business of Trust podcast. I'm your host, Hugo Sanchez, and I'm so glad that you're here. Let's see what Rosemary has to say. Hello, Rosemary. Welcome to the Business of Trust podcast.
Hugo, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Rosemary. You are the most successful and accomplished communicator, public speaking coach that I know. And I know you have a very diverse background and you bring over 3 decades of experience. So how did this transition happen for you?
It's a cumulative process. It's all based on communication. Let me go back to my college years. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to be on TV presenting the evening news. I wanted to be a Barbara Walters. But I had a speech impediment, which was mainly stuttering, which I worked very hard to overcome. But still, that didn't deter me. But then when I graduated with a broadcast journalism degree, I realized how difficult it is to break into broadcasting. So I took the first job that I could find, which was in public relations and advertising. So that grew to the extent that I was then able to work in the spokesperson work, the being the media representative, into the work I did for clients. So I became both the person on camera as well as the person behind the camera, helping with strategy, communication solutions for global companies. And I had the honor of being the leader in public relations for companies like AT&T and Avon, History Channel, Ericsson, and many others. So that role of being the spokesperson, being fluent in the language of media, helped then bring me into what I'm doing today, which is to help individuals and organizations up-level their ability to communicate with impact. So it's really an extension, more of a funneling of my interests and my collected experience over the years. So it's been organic, put it that way. The transitions have been smooth, and I'm privileged to be able to do today what I love to do.
Something that I love about your personal story is how you had to overcome a speech impediment from stuttering. And then I know you did a lot of work on that end, and your dream of being in broadcast media became true. You actually were a newscaster for MSNBC, correct?
I was a contributor, meaning the talking head around the table kind of thing. And I was with them for 2 years at the very beginning of the history of MSNBC. So that was doing live television, Hugo. It was live, unscripted, just the camera was on and people all over the country were tuned in.
Later on in your career, you work in corporate America, particularly for Univision, the largest Spanish-speaking media channel in the world, correct?
Yes.
And you made a transition because you were in PR and you made a transition into following your passion and entering the world of public speaking coaching and executive communication coaching. What made you take that leap forward?
Working in entertainment, in media, is very high pressure. It's 24/7. I was head of public relations for the entertainment division of Univision, which is now called Televisa Univision. It was nonstop. There was never a sense of having achieved, because the minute you finish something, there were 10 other things in the queue waiting to be addressed. And I found that in my day-to-day contact with on-air personalities, that they had a need to improve their speaking, not so much what you saw on camera. They were very polished, very experienced, but they stumbled and they struggled with speaking in English when they represented the company, or they did work outside, off camera, in the community, at conferences, when they were themselves in their, not their role that they fulfill on the screen, but in the flesh. And then I started to recognize that there was a big business opportunity there to work with them. I already knew so many of them that they would trust me to guide them very confidentially to another level of performance off camera. Mm-hmm. And that's where I realized there was a business opportunity, building on those relationships that I already had.
And you and I have worked together for almost 5 years. And it's no secret to me that you've told me many times that this is your passion. So kudos on following your dream on that end.
Thank you.
So Rosemary, I like to talk about how you got your very first client, because at this point you have a lot of authority from your position and your career, but a lot of people knew you in the PR world, in the broadcasting world, but as to make that branding change and getting your first client can be very hard. For those people listening to us who are thinking of making this transition from corporate to consultant, how did you get your first client?
It was a challenge to let people see me in a different context. Although, again, what I ended up doing in my business wasn't that much of a stretch from what I was doing before. It was an extension. But I realized that I needed to make a bold launch statement and to do it as if it were a product or service launch that I had been doing all my career. So I hired a publicist to help me announce that my company was open for business, what the services were, and did a lot of media, and basically just plastered my mailing list or my personal database, letting people know what I was doing. And a lot of personal communication, one-on-one, spreading the word. And that's the way I did it. It was a good 4 or 5 month process, in addition to creating all of the assets, the logo, the branding, the website. As you know, you were part of that initially, creating what would be my go-to-market strategy, what would be the content, what would be my imprimatur, what would I be known for. And all that was really unfolding beautifully up until March of 2020, which, as we know, was when the world changed. And that was a pivot for everyone. I found my footing because I was able to create a curriculum that helped people survive on Zoom. How do you take the in-person, the real world, in the flesh experience and translate it somehow to this limited space we have, into this rectangle? How do we conduct business? How do we stay sane and productive and profitable during that time? So I had to find my way as well.
Up to this point, COVID happens. You're probably 6 months in the making of your business. Did you have a client by the time COVID hit?
Yes. I had several clients. I was working with individuals. Yes. My first few clients were some of the on-air personalities at Univision. And then there I also worked with, I activated my network. And interestingly enough, people started coming to me with a sense of, I can trust you. I can trust you, Rosemary. This is confidential. I don't want the world to know that I need help. I want this to be between you and me, and I want this to be something that is highly customized and personalized. I don't want turn into a robot, I don't want to sound like someone else.
I love to use the phrase in trust because, I mean, the name of this podcast is The Business of Trust. And the reason why I wanted to tune into your first clients is because the premise is that as a professional service provider who is in the business of trust, you're going to get clients through relationships, referrals, and reputation. And it seems that when you're starting your business, you really got to lean into your network, like you said, and lean into the relationships that you have built throughout your career. And that is your first course of action. So it seems that that's what you did. And what I'm hearing is make sure that people in your network knew that this transition was happening. And when you adapted for COVID, it was the same relationships, but you managed to remain relevant in the new context.
Yeah. Yes, as I'm sure everyone had to do some tap dancing and see, where do we go from here? How long will it last? And I found my place in this new ecosystem with something called the Zoom score, which I trademarked. And you helped me launch it and make it widely available, which is simply a 10-point checklist that determines if you are doing a professional presence on Zoom. So in other words, the things that need to be in place in order for you to be taken seriously with authority, with credibility, and that would lead to trust. I improvised a great deal, put a lot of things out there as a trial balloon, and I believe I was successful. And it's still a work in progress because I think we have not fully embraced all the possibilities that are available to us through virtual communication, hybrid, and then how do we toggle back and forth between our screens and in-person relationships.
It's definitely an art. I mean, we're recording this podcast and I'm laughing as you're saying this because right before we started recording, you guided me to change my t-shirt because it was distracting on screen. So thank you for that. One of the things that I'm very interested in capturing is stories about champions. So champions are people in our career, in our lives, who love us and love the work that we do and trusts us immensely. And champions have the power, they're super referrers, and they have the power of bringing our business to a whole new level, to a whole other league, because they open their doors to us. So these are massive referrers of our brand. Have you had champions in your career that you can think of?
In terms of champions and what I would call more advocates, those are people with whom I've had long-standing relationships. People who, from the long tail of my career, who know my integrity, know the quality of my work, know the level of professionalism that I have adhered to throughout. And so the advocates that I have currently are people who may not necessarily have been clients, but people who value my work and are powerful referral sources, who will be perhaps my list of contacts of people who have given me testimonials for my website. And so these are really super advocates who I am very, very proud to have in my inner circle. And these are people with whom I have professional relationships with in terms of the Speakers Association, Public Relations Society, different women professional organizations, even within church groups, community groups, even in my own community and my own homeowners association, where I have established strong ties. Everyone has the power of referral, and you never know where those are going to come from. And
That's true.
And sometimes you have to give away a little bit in order to gain. So actually, my biggest client ever, particularly during COVID, was one of the top 10 insurance companies in the world. And I did free seminars where someone in that company saw what I was offering and brought me in to have a multi-year relationship with them, where I was the in-house expert, the resource for everyone who needed anything to do with even internal communication, team building, and we did it all through Zoom and Microsoft Teams. So I was able to create very, very custom curricula for them, for their Latin American teams. And that was tremendously gratifying because it went right to my wheelhouse, and it also helped them with a service that they didn't have before.
I remember those times. And as you're saying this, I'm remembering this wonderful book that I recently read called The Go-Giver. And it's by Bob Borg and John Davis Mann, and one of it explains 5 rules of massive success, and it's all around giving and letting reciprocity come your way. So that's in my opinion, one of the biggest rules of relationship building and having a business that works through relationships is being very generous in your relationships and give a lot and trust that will circle back to you. So you shared the story of how you got this big client. You mentioned that you started giving some free seminars in this place. Even just the fact of letting an expert come give a free seminar is in itself an act of trust, because it might be free in terms of money, but it's not free in terms of resources, time. They're paying each person who is there by the hour. So that in itself is an act of trust.
Yes, yes, and the giving to receive is fundamental. It's really the law of the universe, and you really can find thousands of applications in different aspects of life. But in business, it should be, and still is, even in the age of AI, it should be considered fundamental.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, I mean, when I invited you to participate in this podcast is because I know how relationship driven you are. I mean, I consider you, besides my client, my friend. And we share lunch a few times a year, and it's always lovely. So I think there's a very human component about doing business that is very joyful. And when I see you, I see how active you are in your community, how active you are not only in professional circles but also in civic circles, like you mentioned, the homeowner association. So it seems like you really show up, and you don't know where referrals can come from, but you do. I've been to events with you, and you seem to manage the room pretty good, connect with people. You're pretty good at small talk, and actually you're delivering a training on small talk that leads into deeper conversations. We'll talk a lot about that in a second. But can you speak about the in-person relationship building?
I've learned that you need to follow your interests and create those concentric circles. So it's not only business. So if I love tennis, I carve out part of my time, or now it's a pickleball, to forge relationships in those circles. And when you're there, you're doing more talking really than playing, because you're waiting for your turn to go on the court, right? You're doing the cordial meet and greet when you first arrive to play, and then afterwards you might have a cup of coffee or a beer. So those are opportunities to establish social ties that could flourish and build into business relationships. But it's following your interests. So eventually those groups will start to overlap. So if it's interest in art and culture and concerts and civic affairs, community welfare, children, mentoring, young adults, all these things end up having some kind of parallel purpose. And besides, you need to enjoy it. Everything you do, your time is so precious. Just enjoy everything. And with that joy, then comes the sense of being relevant in all those places.
And when you're establishing this relationship with people, it's a social context. You don't want to be the soliciting person who is always like selling to their friends, but it kind of happens naturally that if they like you and they trust you, even if you met, especially if you met like through other common interest, to have the relationship transcend into a professional relationship. Any word of advice for people who are very social, but that transition doesn't necessarily happen?
It's delicate. You need to practice it a great deal, and so that it becomes second nature. It's being observant, Hugo. It's really being attuned to your environment. I like to, when I do workshops, I give my students some exercises in situational observation. What is around you? And I give them a sheet that has the alphabet from A to Z, and I give them a minute, working in small groups, 2 or 3 people. And I say, okay, so you have 1 minute to identify something that's in this room on your person that starts with these letters. So it's an exercise in observing what is here, what is someone wearing, what parts of the body. And it's to be hyper aware of what's around you, because your small talk comes from those observations. It's more than Hi, how are you today? I'm fine. How are you? It's, hey, I love the pattern on your blouse. I think it's such a nice, comfortable fabric. Or, super hot day. I think you're wearing just the right garment for the 98-degree weather today. Things of that nature. I mean, it's not pandering. It's simply being observant and being tasteful and truthful,
Yeah.
and that just opens up tremendous potential for conversation. Invariably, Ugo, what happens when I tell someone what I do for a living, the first response is, "Oh, I can use that myself." And
There's a
you'd be
great deal of
surprised how sometimes people are connected through neighbors, through marriage, through family, to someone who could use my services for and has the resources to compensate me for it.
I'll complement what you just said by I hear there's a great deal of clarity in your communication. So when people is very clear about what you do and who you do it for, and what kind of folks they should refer your way. The other thing is that because I've worked with you for 5 years, I will just share that you're pretty good at sending names to the agency of people that you meet in person that you want to add to your mailing list. You're actually pretty good at telling people that you have a mailing list and to see if you can add them to the list. And that's, I think that's such a good way to just remain relevant, even if it's a person you met one time. It's a good way to stay top of mind on a value basis.
Yes. And as you know, because you collaborate with me on this, everything I put out has value. I go out of my way to not be frivolous
Yeah.
and to offer something that people can use, that is, hey, I just read this and God, I can apply it to my work, or I can bring it to my next meeting, or I can apply it to my next media interview. And so it's something that these are nuggets that are useful, practical, and that apply to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosemary. If someone is listening right now and they want to learn more about you, where would you like to direct them?
It's very easy. What you see is my name. That's my website, rosemaryravinal.com. And if you look up Rosemary Ravinal, there's only one Rosemary Ravinal, I believe, on Earth. So I don't think there'll be any confusion. But I'm based in South Florida, rosemaryravinal.com, and there you'll see lots of information, including how to subscribe to my mailing list for my weekly email and for my monthly blog and videos. So I'd be delighted to have conversations with anyone. I do offer 15-minute, no obligation consultations, and I love to see that in my calendar, because that brings me great joy to meet different people and to learn about their businesses and their needs.
Thank you, Rosemary. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the time and the generosity of advice you've shared today.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you, Hugo.
Hey, before you go, I created this podcast to inspire you and to offer real help. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, and there's so much noise out there when it comes to marketing advice for coaching and consulting. So please visit thebusinesstrust.com and subscribe to receive our new episodes that release every Friday. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Hugo Sanchez.